You thought I'd stay soft forever, that I'd keep waiting, keep forgiving, keep pretending I didn't notice the games. You mistook my silence for weakness. You counted on my kindness to keep me stuck. I was patient. I gave you chances. I gave you explanations I should have never had to give. And still, you crossed the line, again and again. Now the silence isn't weakness. It's a warning. The version of me you knew, it's gone. The one who stayed up crying, trying to understand why I was never enough. That version has nothing left to prove. No need to beg, no space for disrespect. You had the softest parts of me and chose to bruise them. Now I don't speak twice. I don't repeat boundaries. I don't chase anyone. The old me hoped you'd change. This one changed for good. You lost access when you mistook love for weakness. I used to say yes when everything inside me wanted to scream no. I let things slide just to avoid conflict. I smiled when I was hurt. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. I wasn't soft because I was kind. I was soft because I was scared. Scared of being abandoned. Scared of being seen as difficult. I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought giving more would make people stay. I believed that if I was understanding enough, patient enough, loving enough, they'd change. But they didn't. They just took more. I said sorry too much, apologized for my feelings, apologized for speaking up, apologized for existing too loudly. I thought keeping others comfortable was more important than keeping myself whole. So I poured out everything I had, time, energy, forgiveness, loyalty. I kept pouring even when they never filled me back. I gave until I had nothing left, and even then, I kept giving. I trusted people too quickly. I believed in their words without watching their actions. I ignored red flags because I wanted the story to have a happy ending. I excused behavior that broke me, just to keep the idea of love alive. I convinced myself they didn't mean it, that they were just hurting, that they'd do better next time. I gave them every benefit of the doubt while giving myself none. There were moments I cried myself to sleep and woke up pretending I was fine. I kept showing up for people who wouldn't notice if I disappeared. I was the one who checked in first, who forgave first, who waited, who listened, who tried. And each time I did, I lost a little more of myself. I made them the center of my world, while they treated me like an option. But I stayed. I stayed because I thought love required loyalty, even when it was one-sided. I used to think that if someone hurt me, it was my fault. That maybe I wasn't loving them the right way. That maybe I was too sensitive, too emotional, too much. So I started shrinking, dimmed my light, softened my tone, held my tongue. I became smaller and smaller until I barely recognized myself. But they didn't love the smaller version either. They just found it easier to ignore. And still, I stayed. There were times I needed to be held but ended up holding others. Times I needed comfort but was told I was too needy. So I stopped asking. I bottled it up. Became the strong one, the stable one, the dependable one. On the outside, I looked fine, but inside, I was begging to be chosen, not just tolerated, chosen, not for what I could give, but for who I was. But it never came. I was soft with people who were harsh, kind to those who mocked my kindness, gentle with those who used their words like knives. I thought my softness would teach them love, but it only showed them how far they could go. They saw my silence as permission, my patience as weakness, my forgiveness as acceptance. And I taught them how to treat me by what I allowed. That truth cuts the deepest. I gave chances like candy, even after betrayal, even after lies. I let people back in who should have stayed out. I defended those who talked behind my back. I stood up for people who wouldn't even answer a call if I needed them. I thought I was being strong, thought I was being mature. But really, I was afraid. Afraid to be alone, afraid of starting over, afraid that maybe, just maybe, this was all I deserved. Every time I felt overlooked, I tried harder. I thought more love would fix it, more effort, more empathy. I bent over backwards, ignored my needs, sacrificed sleep, peace, and pride. But no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. Because the truth is, I was giving to people who didn't value what they were receiving, and I blamed myself for their emptiness. I tried to fix people who weren't broken. They were just selfish. I stayed loyal to people who would have let me fall without a second thought. I romanticized potential and ignored reality. I told myself that they were going through a phase, that if I loved them right, they'd love me back. But love doesn't work that way. Love isn't a test to pass, it's a mirror. And I was giving mine to people who never looked. I waited for texts that didn't come, for calls that never rang, for explanations that were never offered. And when they finally reached out, it was always when they needed something. I knew that. I felt it. But I still responded, because I thought being there made me valuable. I thought love meant staying available. But availability without respect is self-destruction. I ignored my gut over and over again. That feeling in my stomach, that whisper in my chest, I silenced it for the sake of harmony. But harmony built on lies isn't peace. It's performance, and I performed well, played the role of the understanding one, the easy one, the forgiving one, until I couldn't anymore. They said I was too emotional, that I cared too much, that I was dramatic, but those were just words to keep me quiet, to make me question my instincts. And it worked for a while. I stopped trusting myself. I started believing I was the problem, that maybe if I were colder, quieter, less passionate, things would be better. But better for who? My softness wasn't the issue. It was the people I gave it to, the environments I stayed in, the boundaries I refused to set. I thought being soft made me lovable, but real love doesn't require you to suffer to prove it. Real love doesn't make you bleed and call it growth. I confused suffering with strength, but strength isn't how much pain you can carry. It's knowing when to stop carrying it. I wanted to be loved so badly that I accepted less every time. I settled for words without action, promises with no follow-through, affection that disappeared when it mattered most. I was always there, even when they weren't, always giving more, hoping they'd finally see my worth. But people don't value what they never earn, and I was giving everything for free. The old me believed that love was about endurance, that holding on proved commitment. But holding on to the wrong person doesn't make you loyal. It makes you lost. And I was lost. Lost in proving, explaining, giving. I didn't even notice how empty I'd become, how much of me I'd given away. They didn't take my softness. I handed it over, piece by piece, thinking I was building something real. But I was building a cage, locking myself in with expectations and hopes that never matched their reality. And when they walked away, I was left in that cage, alone. The old me loved hard, but also bled silently. The old me was soft, but also small, afraid to take up space, afraid to ask for more, afraid that if I stood up I'd be left behind. So I stayed low, hoping someone would lift me. But no one came. No one lifted me but me. There's a moment when everything inside you goes quiet. Not peaceful, not calm, just quiet. It's the kind of silence that comes after you've screamed, after you've cried, after you've begged to be understood. That's when something changes. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts small. Maybe it's the way they look at you, like your feelings are a burden. Maybe it's how they laugh off the pain they caused, or how they keep doing the same thing over and over, even after swearing they wouldn't. Whatever it is, it breaks something you didn't know could break. Not your heart. That already happened. This was different. This was the part of you that kept hoping, the part that still believed they'd wake up and see your worth. That part snapped. It's strange when you realize they were never going to change, that the apology you waited for isn't coming, that they're not losing sleep like you are, that the tears you cried meant nothing to them, not because you didn't matter, but because they never really saw you. They saw what they wanted from you, what you gave, the softness, the silence, the forgiveness, but they never saw your soul. And once that truth hits, it doesn't go away. It follows you around. It stings. It tightens your chest every time they act like nothing happened. Every time they smile, like you didn't bleed for them. You reach a point where your tears start to feel like betrayal. Not theirs, yours. Because you keep handing them the power. You keep hoping they'll be different. You keep explaining your pain like they're listening, but they're not. They hear your words and twist them. They watch your pain and keep pressing the same bruise, and that's when anger shows up. Not rage, not yelling, just quiet anger. The kind that builds slowly, like pressure beneath the skin. It doesn't explode, it transforms. It takes every sleepless night, every lie, every moment you doubted yourself, and it sharpens them into clarity. There comes a moment where you just stop. You stop texting, you stop explaining, you stop hoping, you stop needing them to understand, you stop trying to get them to feel bad. And it's not because you don't care anymore. It's because you finally do. About yourself. Something inside you whispers, this is the last time. The last time you make excuses for their behavior. The last time you wait for them to change. The last time you believe their words over their actions. And it's not dramatic. You don't announce it. You don't scream. You just change. Quietly, fully, forever. The breaking point doesn't break you. It builds you. It pulls the softness back inside, tucks it away for people who deserve it. And what shows up in its place is power. Not the kind that needs attention, not ego, just certainty. You start walking differently, talking differently, thinking differently. Your standards go up, your tolerance goes down. You stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop explaining things that should be obvious. You stop waiting for love from people who don't know how to give it, because now you know what love isn't. Before you were soft because you believed in them. You saw their potential. You hoped your love could heal their wounds. You believed if you were kind enough, patient enough, loving enough, they'd become the person you needed. But they didn't, and they won't, not because you weren't enough, but because they never intended to grow. Growth requires effort, accountability, humility, and they'd rather lose you than face themselves. That realization burns. It hurts in a way words can't explain, because you gave them chances. You explained your triggers. You forgave things you shouldn't have, and still, it wasn't enough. Or maybe it was too much kindness, too much access, too much of you, given to someone who didn't value the gift. Now you're different. You see things you used to excuse. You feel things you used to ignore. Your intuition speaks louder. Your boundaries are tighter. You don't wait around for closure anymore. You give it to yourself. Because closure isn't something they hand you. It's something you take when you finally stop needing their version of the story. You stopped shrinking. You used to make yourself small to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to stay in their good graces. But now, you take up space. You say what needs to be said, and if it makes them uncomfortable, so be it. Your truth is no longer up for negotiation. You don't ask twice. Once is enough. If they can't hear you the first time, they're not listening. They're using you. Anger used to scare you. You thought feeling it made you bitter, but now you see it as what it is. A boundary, a signal, a message from your soul that says, no more. You don't use it to hurt others. You use it to protect yourself. You channel it into discipline, into building yourself, into walking away and not looking back. Not because you're heartless, but because you've finally learned how to protect your heart. They may not understand the shift. They may think you've changed, and you have, but not out of spite, out of survival, out of growth, out of necessity. You couldn't stay that soft version of yourself and still make it. That version would have kept getting stepped on, kept giving second, third, 10th chances, kept believing in someone who gave you every reason not to. Now you don't chase, you choose. You don't beg, you observe. You don't explain, you exit. You don't defend your standards, you enforce them. The energy that used to go into fixing others now goes into building yourself. The time you used to spend waiting for answers now goes into finding peace. And the love you used to pour into someone else now stays with you. That breaking point wasn't the end. It was the threshold. You crossed over into a version of yourself that no longer settles, that no longer doubts, that no longer softens itself to be loved. This version of you speaks once, moves once, loves once, with depth, not desperation. You look in the mirror now and see someone who made it out, someone who didn't let pain turn them bitter, but better, someone who turned anger into clarity, loss into freedom, betrayal into fuel. The softness is still there, but now it's protected. It has requirements, and not everyone qualifies. That's what they didn't expect. They thought you would always be the one who forgives without change, the one who stays available, no matter how many times they disappear. But not anymore. That version of you doesn't exist. The new you doesn't need permission to let go, doesn't need apologies to move forward, doesn't need proof to trust your own feelings. They didn't break you, they activated you. And now that you've woken up, you're not asking twice. Learning to set boundaries didn't feel empowering at first. It felt like loss. It felt like silence after begging for connection. It felt like people walking away, not because you did something wrong, but because you finally stopped letting them walk all over you. No one warns you how hard it is to start saying no after years of saying yes out of fear. The first time you speak up, your voice shakes, your heart races. You question yourself before, during, and after, and still, you do it. Not because you feel strong, but because you're tired. Tired of giving and getting nothing back. Tired of always being the one to fix things. Tired of carrying the weight of other people's emotions while yours go ignored. You start to notice who only loves the version of you that says yes, who disappears when you finally draw a line. And that truth hurts more than the boundary itself. At first, it feels like rejection. You're used to being needed, not respected. You're used to being chosen for your silence, not your standards. So when people start falling away, it triggers something. It brings up old wounds, makes you feel disposable. But over time, you realize it's not rejection. It's alignment. People who can't handle boundaries are the ones who benefited from your lack of them. You used to beg people to stay. You pleaded with words, with silence, with effort. You tried harder than you should have for people who gave you the bare minimum. You confused effort with love. You thought if you loved them enough, they'd change. You stayed long after the damage was done. And then one day, you stopped. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. You finally understood that love shouldn't cost your peace. It's strange how quickly things change when you stop proving your worth, when you stop explaining why you're hurting, when you stop trying to get people to understand you. The moment you stop justifying your needs, you realize how many of those conversations were one-sided. You were speaking to ears that never intended to hear you. And when you go quiet, it becomes clear who was only there for your silence. People who truly care don't need constant explanations. They listen, they adapt, they meet you halfway. The rest get offended when you stop bending. Silence became your armor, not because you had nothing to say, but because you realized not everyone deserves access to your voice. You used to think silence was giving up. Now you know it's power. Some people only understand peace when it becomes absence. Some only recognize your value when you stop giving them discounts. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every question deserves an answer. Sometimes walking away is louder than anything you could ever say. You started saying no without explaining why, and that felt strange. You were used to softening your words, cushioning your truth, making people comfortable at your own expense. Saying no used to make you feel guilty. Now it makes you feel free. You realize that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks, and not everyone gets a key. Not because you're better than them, but because your peace is no longer up for negotiation. The first time you enforce a boundary, it feels like loss. But the second time, it feels like peace. The third time, it feels like power. And soon, it becomes a standard. You stop checking your phone hoping they'll understand. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. You stop putting yourself last just to keep someone else first. You stop giving access to people who only come to take. It wasn't about becoming cold. It was about becoming clear. You used to think being nice was the same as being good. But nice can be manipulation when it's rooted in fear. You are nice to avoid conflict. You are nice to feel safe. You are nice so people wouldn't leave. But being clear is different. It's honest. It's direct. It's saying what you mean and standing by it. It's letting people be uncomfortable with your truth rather than comfortable with your silence. Respect doesn't come from being overly available. It comes from being consistent with your standards. The more you respected yourself, the more you saw who never did. People who only showed up when they needed something. People who disappeared when you needed them. People who called you selfish the moment you stopped putting them first. And that exposure hurt, but it also healed something. You started grieving the person you used to be. The one who said yes to everything. The one who gave without limits. The one who mistook being needed for being loved. That version of you deserved better. They were trying. They meant well. But they were too soft in a world that took advantage of softness. That version of you had to die for this one to live. The version that doesn't ask twice. The version that doesn't chase. The version that no longer explains why their time, energy, or love must be earned. You're still kind, but it's a kind that comes with boundaries, with rules, with self-respect. The kind that doesn't tolerate disrespect just to avoid being alone. The kind that holds space for love, but not for manipulation. Your kindness now has edges. It has requirements. It's not given to everyone. And that's how it should have been all along. Setting boundaries changed your world, not because people changed, Most of them didn't, but you did. You stopped needing permission to protect your energy. You stopped apologizing for asking for what you deserve. You started believing that your standards don't make you hard to love. They make love real when it finally arrives. You stopped making yourself smaller for people too weak to stand beside your growth. Some left, some stayed. But more importantly, you stayed with yourself. You chose you, again and again, through guilt, through discomfort, through silence. You chose peace over chaos, truth over people-pleasing, and power over pretending. That choice changed everything. I used to explain myself to people who already knew what they were doing. I used to ask twice, sometimes 3 times, for the bare minimum. I waited, hoping they'd realize how much they were hurting me. I excused their silence, their coldness, their disrespect, because I believed they just needed time. I gave them time. I gave them grace. I gave them the benefit of every doubt, and all I got in return was emptiness. One-sided effort. Half love wrapped in fake promises. I thought being loyal would eventually be rewarded. I thought staying soft would open their eyes. But it didn't. It just made it easier for them to take. It made me easy to overlook. Something changed. Not all at once, but gradually, then all at once. I woke up one day and didn't recognize the version of me who kept trying to prove her worth to people who didn't even value their own. I stopped waiting. I stopped asking. I stopped giving my energy to people who only showed up when it was convenient. And it wasn't because I became bitter. It was because I finally became clear, crystal clear. No more blurred lines, no more mixed signals, no more pretending that crumbs were meals. I wanted more, and more started with me. I became someone who knows what peace feels like. And once you taste peace, chaos is no longer attractive. I used to mistake excitement for love, intensity for connection. Now I know that the loudest person in the room often has the most to hide. I don't chase highs anymore. I look for steady. I look for real. I look for kind. Kind doesn't mean perfect. It means honest. It means consistent. It means present. I stopped entertaining potential and started honoring reality. I don't make excuses for people anymore. If someone wanted to show up, they would. If they cared, you wouldn't have to guess. If it matters to them, they'll make it obvious. That's the standard now. Not expectations, standards. Expectations leave you hoping. Standards leave you walking. I speak once. I express how I feel, what I need, what I won't accept. And if that's too much for someone, they're not for me. I used to think being too much was a flaw. Now I know it just means I'm not for the emotionally unavailable. Self-respect is non-negotiable now. I used to think it was selfish to choose myself. Now I know it's survival. I've learned that being nice without boundaries is dangerous. People will test you. Not everyone, but enough. And when they do, your silence speaks louder than begging ever could. I don't explain what I've already stated. I don't ask twice. The first time is for clarity. After that, it's about consequences. I used to want attention, to be chosen, to be prioritized, to be the first person someone thought of in the morning. But now, I want purpose. I want peace in my chest. I want to wake up without anxiety. I want to move through my day without second-guessing my worth. I don't need people to tell me I matter. I already know I do. That's the difference now. I walk into rooms with my head high, not looking for validation, but grounded in truth. I don't engage in pointless conversations anymore, if it's not honest, if it's not respectful, if it's not mutual. I step away. Some people want access to you without earning it. They want your energy, your time, your loyalty. but they don't want the responsibility that comes with it. And I'm no longer interested in one-sided connections. I've had enough of those. They drain you. They make you forget who you are. And I promised myself I'd never lose me again trying to keep someone else. I've learned to be okay with being misunderstood. Not everyone will see the work I've done. Not everyone will understand the boundaries I've built. That's fine. I didn't build this version of me for everyone. I built it for the version of me that cried alone, that begged, that stayed too long. That version deserved protection. So I became her protector. Now, I move differently. I trust slowly. I observe more than I speak. I don't rush. If something feels off, I listen. If someone's words don't match their actions, I don't wait for the crash. I walk away before I need to crawl out. It's not pride. It's awareness. I've had to rebuild myself from too many emotional wreckages to pretend I don't see the signs. I no longer confuse familiarity with safety. Just because someone feels known doesn't mean they're good for you. I have learned to love without losing myself. That's the power shift. I used to love in a way that left me empty. Now I love in a way that keeps me full. And that means I don't chase. I attract. What's meant for me will recognize me. What's aligned with me won't play games. What respects me won't test my boundaries. And I'm okay with walking away from everything else. Peace became the priority. Approval used to be. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be accepted. I molded myself to fit spaces that didn't deserve me. I bent until I broke. And when I broke, they stepped over the pieces. Now, I don't bend. I stand. I show up as I am. If that's too much, then they're not enough. I don't shrink to fit. I stand to be seen. And if being seen threatens them, that's not my burden. There's something powerful about knowing you're enough. Not in a loud, arrogant way, but in a quiet, grounded way. The kind of knowing that makes you walk away without needing closure. That makes you smile when you're alone. That makes you protect your peace, even if it costs you a few people. Because nothing is worth losing yourself again. Not love. Not attention, not fake connections, nothing. I used to want people to stay. Now I want people to show up right. If they can't do that, I let them go. I don't beg, I don't chase, I don't fight for space in someone's life. Love isn't supposed to feel like a war. Relationships aren't supposed to feel like a test. If I have to earn your loyalty, you're not loyal. If I have to remind you I matter, you've already forgotten. And I don't make people my home anymore. I made that mistake once. Now I'm my own home. I'm the safe space. I'm the place I return to. I trust myself. I believe in the choices I make. I don't wait for someone else to lead me out of pain. I led myself. Because I've done it before, and I'll do it again if I have to. But this time, I'll do it faster, stronger, smarter. The softness is still there. I never lost it. I just don't hand it out like candy anymore. It's reserved now. It's earned. I still care deeply. I still love hard, but only when it's safe, only when it's mutual, only when it doesn't cost me my peace. There's nothing wrong with being soft, but being soft without protection invites pain. I've learned that the hard way. Now, I carry both. A heart that loves and a spine that holds firm. The version of me who once gave chances out of fear is gone. The one who stayed silent to keep someone comfortable is gone. The one who thought love meant sacrifice at any cost is gone. In her place is someone who speaks with intention, who sets boundaries without guilt, who values honesty over comfort, who doesn't wait to be chosen because she already chose herself. This version of me doesn't ask twice. I don't repeat myself. I don't prove myself. I don't chase people who walk away. I don't make excuses for red flags. I don't shrink to make others feel tall. I've walked through fire to get here, and I'm not going back. I know who I am now. I know what I bring. I know what I deserve, and I won't settle for less just to keep someone around. This is what growth looks like. Quiet, steady, unapologetic. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm not trying to make anyone regret losing me. I'm simply living in a way that makes peace my priority. And if that intimidates someone, then maybe they were never meant to stay. They always come back. Maybe not the next day, maybe not even in the same year, but eventually they circle back. They always want to know if they still have a place in your life, if they can still reach the version of you who used to say yes without thinking, who used to forgive too quickly, who waited by the phone hoping for something as simple as consistency. And when they do come back, they're not prepared for who answers the door. There's a shift they feel before you even say a word. It's in your eyes, your tone, your silence. You don't flinch anymore. You don't ask questions. You don't fill the space with nervous laughter or soft excuses. You just stand there, still and sure. It unsettles them, because they remember the version of you who cried, who begged, who stayed long after they deserved you. That version was soft. This one is steady. They sense it, and it confuses them. You used to light up when they messaged. Now you take your time. You used to be available on demand. Now they don't even know if their words are being read. They expect the same access they once had, but everything's changed. Not because you want to hurt them, but because healing taught you what your peace costs, and you're no longer offering discounts. They try subtle moves first. A harmless, "Hey, how have you been?" A meme they know will make you smile. A comment on your story, testing the waters, watching to see if the old softness still lives in you. They might even bring up a memory, something they know pulls at your heart, but they're not doing it to reconnect from a place of growth. They're doing it to see if they still have influence. They notice when you don't take the bait, when your responses are polite but cold, when you don't open the door they thought would always be unlocked. Some of them get frustrated. Some try harder. They mistake your calmness for coldness. But it's not that. You've just changed. You've done the inner work. You've faced the nights that shattered you, and you built yourself back from pieces they didn't care they broke. So they push a little harder. They might call, say they miss you, that they've been thinking, that no one's ever understood them the way you did. But now you hear those words differently. Before they sounded like hope. Now they sound like a trap, because you remember the emotional games, the empty promises, the way they used your kindness like a safety net. You remember how it felt to be loved halfway. They don't like this new version of you. Not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer easy to manipulate. You no longer ask for clarity. You demand it. You don't wait for effort. You expect it. You don't fall for charm. You measure consistency. They used to play on your insecurities. Now you own them. They used to disappear and return like nothing happened. Now they find doors closed, boundaries in place, no space left for what once drained you, and you feel nothing. Not anger, not longing, just clarity. You understand now. They didn't miss you. They missed the access, the comfort of knowing you were always an option. But you're not someone's option anymore. You are your own priority. You answer with grace, but keep your distance. Not to punish them, but to protect yourself. Because going back to that version of you would mean betraying the one you fought so hard to become. There's no need for closure anymore. You've given it to yourself. You stopped needing their apology. You stopped needing to be understood by someone who never took the time to listen. You stopped needing them to see your worth. You finally saw it on your own, and that changed everything. They don't understand how you've moved on without a dramatic exit, without a fight. But you don't fight for peace anymore. You don't explain what should be obvious. You don't argue to be respected. If it's not clear in their actions, their words no longer matter. Silence became your boundary, and in that silence you found peace. They'll tell people you changed, that you switched up, that you used to be different, and they'll be right. You did change. You had to. You changed because staying the same meant staying broken. You changed because love shouldn't have felt like pain. You changed because they left you with no choice but to rebuild. And now that you've rebuilt, they can't find a way in, because this new structure wasn't built for them. You might still remember the old days, the softness, the warmth, the way you loved without fear. That part of you still exists, but it's protected now. Not everyone gets to see it. Not everyone earns it. It's reserved for those who show up right, consistently, those who value you without you having to convince them, the ones who don't make you question yourself. This version of you doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't wait around hoping someone will realize your value. This version of you knows better. And when they come knocking, hoping to find the old you, the one who would have opened the door in seconds, they're met with silence, or maybe a single sentence. That version of me doesn't live here anymore. They will test you. Don't mistake it for love. It's habit, it's ego, it's boredom. Sometimes it's guilt. But rarely is it genuine, because people who want to come back don't just reach out. They show change. They show effort. They show growth. If they're only reaching out when you've leveled up, it's not love. It's fear of being left behind. You didn't become cold. You became conscious. You didn't become bitter. You became better. You didn't stop loving. You just stopped loving people who give pain in return. And now, you don't ask twice. You speak once. You wait once. You give once. After that, it's silence. Not to be cruel, but to protect your healing. They can't manipulate this version of you, because now you see the pattern. You read between the lines. You feel the energy shift, and the minute it starts feeling familiar, you exit. No goodbye needed. No explanations, just distance. And that silence? It says everything, more than anger, more than closure. It says, you loved the soft me, but you can't handle this one. Strength used to look different. You once thought it meant fighting to prove yourself, holding back tears, wearing a smile even when you were breaking. You believed silence was weakness, and emotion was a flaw. So you tried to stay tough, tried to stay available. You kept showing up, even when it cost you peace. You stayed, listened, forgave, tolerated, over and over. Because you thought being kind would win them over. Because you thought love meant endurance, not standards. But strength isn't loud. It's not about yelling or slamming doors. It's not about shutting everyone out or pretending you don't care. It's not cold. It doesn't need to perform. Real strength is calm. It's steady. It's the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't force. It's quiet, but it's there. In your choices, in your presence, in the way you now walk away without leaving a mess behind. You used to react fast. A harsh word could send your thoughts spinning. A shift in someone's tone would leave you spiraling, wondering what you did wrong. You used to overthink texts, reread conversations, search for signs, try to fix things you didn't even break. But not anymore. Now you pause, you breathe, you wait. You see things for what they are, not for what you wish they could be. That shift didn't come overnight. It came from being disappointed one too many times, from realizing that peace is more valuable than being right, that not everything deserves your energy. Some things are better left unanswered. You don't give the same explanations you once did. You used to feel responsible for how others felt. You used to over-explain your choices, hoping they'd understand, hoping they'd finally get it. Now, you don't. You stopped repeating yourself. If they don't see your value, that's not your loss. You no longer try to convince people of your worth. You no longer soften your truth just to be liked. If someone doesn't get the message the first time, you don't send it again. You don't argue about your boundaries. You enforce them. Strength now looks like saying no without a long excuse. It's choosing peace, even when chaos looks familiar. It's walking away early when something doesn't feel right, instead of waiting for proof that it's wrong. You stopped waiting for red flags to scream. Now the moment your peace feels disturbed, you pay attention. You don't stay just because of time or history. You don't confuse attachment with love. You walk when it's time, even if your heart still wants to stay. You've learned that not everyone deserves access. Not everyone earns the soft parts of you, and that's okay. You used to think being available made you kind, but now you know it made you drained. You gave people the benefit of the doubt when all they gave you was doubt. You excused behavior that confused you, but confusion is already the answer. You've outgrown the need for chaos to feel alive. You now choose clarity, even when it's quiet. You used to bend until you broke. Not anymore. You still care. You still love. But now, you do it with boundaries. You're still soft. But your softness is protected now. You don't hand it to people who haven't earned it. You used to be wide open. Now you're selective. That's growth. That's power. There's peace in not reacting. There's power in not proving. When someone tries to trigger you and you stay still, that's control. Not for their sake, but for your own. You've wasted too much energy in the past, explaining yourself to people, committed to misunderstanding you. You don't do that anymore. You've learned that not every question deserves an answer. Not every situation needs closure. Sometimes you give yourself closure by walking away. The people who knew the old version of you don't know how to handle this one. They expect the same reactions. They test you with the same games. But you don't play anymore. You've lost interest in things that once consumed you. You've stopped trying to fix what's not yours to repair. You don't absorb moods. You don't take on guilt that doesn't belong to you. You've learned how to separate their mess from your peace. That's strength. That's freedom. The old you would have stayed in the argument. This one walks away mid-sentence. The old you would have written long messages trying to explain your pain. This one goes silent and keeps their power. Not out of pride, but out of protection. You've been through enough to know when your words won't be heard, and you're done wasting your breath on people who only listen to defend themselves. You're learning to trust your instincts, the gut feeling you used to ignore. You listen to it now. You've seen what happens when you silence it. Now it's your compass. If something feels off, you don't justify it. You move. And even when that movement hurts, it hurts less than staying where you don't belong. You no longer need approval to feel whole. You've started finding comfort in your own company. You used to chase validation. Now you validate yourself. You wake up and show up for you. You celebrate your own growth. You hold your own hand. You're not waiting for anyone to save you. You already did that. Softness was never your problem. The problem was not knowing when to pull back, not knowing when to stop giving, not knowing that you could love and still walk away, that you could forgive and still never return. Now you know. Now you do both. You love without losing yourself. You care without sacrificing your dignity. You give, but not at the cost of your own peace. This version of you knows when to speak and when to go silent, when to stay and when to leave, when to try and when to stop. You're not reactive, you're responsive. You're no longer fueled by anxiety and fear. You're fueled by self-worth and awareness. That awareness saved you. You still feel, you still get hurt, but now you don't stay hurt. You process, learn, and adjust. You don't let pain become your identity. You let it become a lesson, and each time you grow, not harder, just wiser. They don't recognize this version of you because you stopped giving them the same access. You stopped entertaining what used to drain you. You started choosing peace so consistently that anything chaotic feels unnatural. And that's not coldness, that's healing, that's maturity. This version of you is loyal to your peace, loyal to your growth, loyal to your standards. You no longer care to be understood by people who made you question your sanity. You don't need to prove your value to people who never saw it. You see it now, and that's enough. You finally realize that your silence isn't a weakness. It's a decision, a form of protection, a boundary with no negotiation. And anyone who can't handle it was never meant to stay. You speak once now. You don't repeat. You don't chase. You don't beg. You just remove yourself. This is what strength feels like. Not needing to announce your worth. Just knowing it and acting like it every single day. You've been too patient with people who didn't value you. You said yes when you should have said no. You stayed quiet when you should have spoken up. You tolerated behavior that left you empty, all in the name of love, loyalty, or peace. And now you're here, tired, worn down, wondering how you became so invisible in a life you gave so much to. But this isn't where it ends. It's not too late to change. You're allowed to become the version of yourself that no longer settles. It doesn't require you to become cold. You don't have to shut everyone out. You just need to get clear. Clear on who you are, clear on what you want, clear on what you will and will not accept. Because clarity is power. It's how you stop living on autopilot and start living on purpose. And once you're clear, everything changes. Your energy, your relationships, your standards. The world told you being soft meant being good, that bending meant kindness, that forgiving too soon meant strength. But now you know, people take advantage of that softness when it's not guarded by boundaries. You can still be kind, but you no longer have to be available to everyone. You don't have to let disrespect walk through your open door just because your heart is big. You've outgrown dysfunction. That's nothing to feel guilty about. You're allowed to leave conversations that drain you. You're allowed to stop explaining yourself to people who only listen to respond, not to understand. You don't owe anyone your presence, your time, or your peace. Especially if they've already shown they don't know what to do with it. Growth means letting go of what you once accepted, and sometimes that means walking away from what you once begged to stay. Stop apologizing for how you've changed. That growth came from pain, from silence, from all the nights you questioned your worth, replaying moments where you gave too much and got too little. That kind of growth costs something, so don't downplay it. Don't shrink yourself to make others more comfortable with your evolution. You didn't come this far to go backwards. You didn't fight through betrayal, heartbreak, confusion, and loneliness just to be soft in the same places that got you hurt. Your silence isn't weakness anymore. It's power. It means you no longer argue with people who already made up their mind. It means you stopped explaining your intentions to those who twisted them. It means you'd rather keep your peace than win a fight. That's not giving up. That's knowing your value. And once you truly understand your value, you'll stop offering discounts to people who can't afford you. You might still feel misunderstood. That's okay. Being misunderstood is better than being mistreated. Let them think you're distant. Let them say you've changed. Let them call you cold. As long as you're choosing yourself, their labels don't matter. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always label your growth as selfishness. Don't let their discomfort pull you back into a version of yourself that couldn't say no. You don't need to explain your standards. You enforce them through action, through silence, through walking away when words no longer work. The old you begged people to treat you better. The new you just stops replying. That shift is powerful. It changes how people interact with you. It attracts those who respect your presence and repels those who only wanted access, not connection. Not everyone deserves a second explanation. Not every text needs a response. Not every apology deserves acceptance. You are allowed to protect your energy without guilt. You are allowed to say, "This is enough," and move on. The moment you stop performing for approval, you start living in your truth. And the truth is, you've always been enough. They just couldn't see it, because they weren't meant to. You may still love people you had to walk away from. That love is real. But love doesn't mean staying where you're not seen. It doesn't mean continuing cycles that leave you empty. Sometimes love looks like release, like choosing peace over closeness, like wishing them well from far away. That's real love too, the kind that doesn't destroy you in the process. Some people won't recognize you anymore. That's expected. You no longer tolerate what you once excused. You've stopped over-explaining. You've started choosing yourself in rooms where you used to shrink. That confuses people, especially those who are comfortable with the old version of you. The one who said yes too much, the one who over-apologized, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace. But this version doesn't ask twice. Your peace is not negotiable. Your self-respect is not up for discussion, and your time is not a gift you hand out to everyone. Start treating it like it matters, because it does. Stop waiting for people to value you when you haven't valued yourself. That begins with the boundaries you set, the standards you uphold, the way you choose you every single day. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are someone who felt everything too strongly in a world that rewards numbness. And now, you've decided to protect that heart instead of handing it over to people who only take. That's not a flaw. That's healing. That's growth. This shift you're going through, it's not easy. It comes with grief. You'll miss people. You'll miss who you were, even if you know that version wasn't safe. But the pain of outgrowing who you were is far less than the pain of staying stuck in who you no longer are. There is freedom on the other side of that discomfort. There's power in becoming someone you don't have to betray to survive. You're allowed to outgrow everything that once felt normal but now feels heavy. You're allowed to say, "I don't accept this anymore." You don't need to justify healing. You don't need to convince anyone that you're doing better. The ones who care won't need convincing. The ones who don't, let them go. Your silence, your peace, your energy, they are your strength now. You don't have to raise your voice to prove your point. You don't have to keep the conversation going just to seem kind. Walk away early. Walk away quietly. Let your absence speak, and let that speak louder than anything you could have said. They will notice, not immediately, but eventually, when your energy no longer meets theirs, when your presence no longer cushions their chaos, when you stop answering the calls that used to pull you back. That silence will echo, and by then you won't need them to hear it, because you'll already be gone. Not physically, maybe, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You'll have moved on to a place where you are whole. This is your reminder. You are allowed to change, to reset, to rewrite your story without permission. The old you was soft, always bending. This you is different. This you doesn't ask twice. This you loves from a place of strength. And from now on, every version you become will be built on truth, on clarity, and on self-worth. You don't owe the past anything but gratitude. It showed you who not to be. It showed you who not to trust. And now, it's your turn to lead with intention, with purpose, with boundaries that protect your peace. Stop explaining. Start enforcing. That's where your power lives. The old me would have waited for an apology, for a change, for someone to finally see my worth. That version begged for bare minimum, stayed quiet to keep the peace, and held on to hope long after the damage was done. I used to explain myself to people who had already decided not to understand me. I used to hold space for people who only showed up when it was easy. But that version of me doesn't exist anymore. This version doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't wait. I speak once. If it's not heard, I walk. No second chances where there's no respect. No more empty seats at my table for people who only show up when they're hungry for what I built. Silence has become my answer. Distance my boundary, peace my priority. If it costs me my dignity, it's too expensive. If I have to explain the basics, it's not worth my energy. You don't get to keep poking at the same scar and expect me not to flinch. You don't get to show up after the storm and ask for shelter. Not after you watched me break and did nothing. Not after you fed the fire and stood back like it wasn't your match that started it. This voice I carry now isn't loud because it needs to be heard. It's calm because it doesn't. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. I am the proof. The new me knows how to walk away with grace, knows how to leave when it's still hard, knows how to stop explaining pain to people who sleep well after causing it. I no longer romanticize potential. I look at patterns. I read silence louder than words. I don't beg people to choose me. If I'm not your first thought, I won't be your backup plan. The version you thought would wait forever has already moved on. I don't fear loneliness anymore. I fear fake love, forced loyalty, and the cost of shrinking myself for the comfort of others. I used to be soft in the wrong places, silent at the wrong times. Now I choose softness only for those who deserve it. I speak my truth, even if my voice shakes. I leave before I'm left. I don't hold doors open for those who slammed them on me. This peace I carry now. It was earned through sleepless nights, through heartbreak, through walking away when it hurt most, through letting go of people I once thought I couldn't live without. I buried the old version of me with every apology I gave when I wasn't wrong, with every tear I cried over people who wouldn't have blinked if I disappeared. That soft version cried quietly. This one walks away loudly, not with noise but with presence, not with revenge but with growth. And the silence I leave behind, that's the loudest thing they'll ever hear.